You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just get what happened? Like you see a plate and some crumbs on the table, and your brain instantly flashes to a midnight snack. Well, that's not magic, right? It's actually a super powerful kind of reasoning that we use like all day, every day, to figure out all of life's little mysteries. So today, we're going to put a name to that mental superpower.
Okay, so here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the everyday detective in all of us. Then we'll get into what inference to the best explanation actually is. After that, we'll see just how powerful it is, taking it from kitchens to planets. Then we'll hit a major roadblock with the argument of the bad lot. And finally, figure out how we can go about making reasoning reliable. Sound good? Let's jump in.
All right, Section 1, the everyday detective. This is all about how we solve those little puzzles in life without even really trying. So let me just set up a really quick scenario for you. Okay, so here's the deal. Let's say you know for a fact that your friends Tim and Harry had this massive fight. I mean, it was a real friendship ender. They're done. Finished. That's the one thing you're absolutely sure about. But then someone comes up to you and says they just saw Tim and Harry jogging together. Wait, what? That doesn't add up, right? People who just had a huge falling out don't typically go for a friendly jog.
So what's your brain doing right now? You've got these two totally conflicting pieces of info. What's the immediate story that pops into your head to make it all make sense? Just take a second. What's the most likely explanation here?
I'm willing to bet you immediately thought, oh, they must have made up, right? It's the simplest, most obvious story that connects all the dots. And that little mental jump you just did, that wasn't a random guess. It's a very specific kind of logical leap. And believe it or not, it has an aim. Which brings us to our next section. Let's actually put a name to that awesome tool your brain just used to connect the dots between that huge fight and them jogging together. It's called abduction. Or, if you want a more descriptive name, inference to the best explanation, often shortened to IBE. Think about it. You don't know for a fact they made up. You weren't there, but you inferred it because, out of all the possibilities, it was simply the best explanation for the evidence you had. So, how does this stack up against other kinds of reasoning we talk about? Well, you've got deduction, which is totally ironclad. All men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. If the first parts are true, the end has to be true. Then there's induction, which is all about patterns and probability. If you've seen 1,000 white swans, you're going to guess the next one will be white too. But abduction, or IBE, that's a different beast. It's not about absolute certainty or just raw numbers. Its whole game is about explanatory power, finding the most plausible story. Okay, so this isn't just for figuring out your friend's drama or, why the cookie jar is empty. This exact same kind of thinking scales up, way up. In fact, it's one of the cornerstones of science. It's been the engine behind some of the most massive discoveries ever. Let's take the discovery of the planet Neptune, for example. Back in the 1800s, astronomers noticed that the orbit of Uranus was weird. It was wobbling and veering off the path that Newton's laws of gravity predicted. Now, they could have just thrown up their hands and said, well, guess Newton was wrong. But a better explanation, a more plausible story, was that there was another undiscovered planet out there, and its gravity was messing with Uranus. So they took that idea, did the maths to figure out where this mystery planet should be, pointed their telescopes, and bam, there was Neptune. That is a textbook case of abduction. And it's so important that the philosopher of science, Ernest Macmillan, flat out called it the inference that makes science. It's that creative spark, that leap from, that's weird, to a plausible hypothesis you can actually go out and test. It's how we move forward. But there's a catch. How reliable is it really? And this leads us right into the biggest, thorniest problem with this whole way of thinking. I mean, just because an explanation is the best one we've come up with, does that actually mean it's the true one, or even close? This is a really serious challenge. So let's look at the simple textbook version of this rule. It's basically look at all the possible explanations you have, pick the one that explains the evidence the best, and conclude it's true. Seems pretty straightforward, right? But there's a huge, gaping hole in this logic. And here's the hole. What if the real explanation isn't even in your set of options? What if the true answer is something you, or even all of science, haven't even thought of yet? This is exactly what the philosopher Bas van Fraassen famously called the argument of the bad lot. The idea is, we might pat ourselves on the back for choosing the best theory we've got, but what if our entire collection of theories, our whole lot, is just bad?
We could just be picking the shiniest apple from a rotten barrel.
Now, that's a pretty heavy critique, right? It could make you question everything. But philosophers didn't just throw in the towel. Instead, they went back to work to try and refine the rules, to make this whole process more robust and reliable. And you can see that evolution right here. The first version, ABD1, is the simple one we talked about. Pick the best one, call it true. But ABD2 adds a crucial new step. It says, okay, H has to be the best, and it has to be good enough. It's like a quality control check. This helps you avoid picking a best explanation that's still, frankly, terrible. And then ABD3 gets even more careful. It says, you know what, we're not even going to say the best one is true. We're just going to say it's probably closer to the truth than the other options. It's a much more humble and, honestly, a much more defensible way to think. So let's just recap the key takeaways here. Abduction, or IBE, is basically our brain's default tool for finding the most plausible cause for something. It's not a guarantee like deduction, and it's not based on stats like induction. It's all about the explanation. We've seen it's been absolutely central to huge scientific discoveries. But, and this is a big but, the argument of the bad lot is a very real problem we have to watch out for. And that's why these refined, more cautious rules have been developed. So where does that leave us today? Well, this isn't just some dusty old philosophical debate. A lot of thinkers now argue that abduction is a vital partner to more modern ideas about probability, like Bayesianism. Abduction is kind of like the creative first step. It's what generates the plausible ideas for us to even consider in the first place, before we start getting into the weeds and calculating probabilities. So, I want to leave you with this one final thought. You use this reasoning tool literally all day long, from the second your alarm goes off to the minute your head hits the pillow. You're constantly making these little leaps to the best explanation. But the next time you do it, the next time you jump to a conclusion that just feels right, maybe pause for a second and ask yourself, how confident am I, really, that my best explanation is actually the right one?